Steve Rowe. I just agreed beforehand. It's not Stephen. It's only if I'm really mad with you that I say Stephen. So Steve Rowe of TNS, not of West Highland. We're gonna talk about that in a second. The history of Steve Rowe, West Highland, now TNS. I'm so pleased to have you on this podcast. You and I have known each other for quite a few years. I always enjoyed when I was coming to New York and staying at the Doubletree on Stone Street. It was a nice walk down to Water Street to pop into your offices early morning and have a chat. So that was something I tried to do on a regular basis, and I enjoyed doing. So I consider us friends over the years. So thank you for doing this. So as I always do, I'm going to put your LinkedIn profile and your company website sort of on the description so people can sort of find out more about you. But give us a little bit of an introduction about Stephen Rowe. And I think it is worthwhile. I know you best because many, many years you were West Highland and now you're TNS. So sort of describe that journey. Steve.
I will. So thank you for having me. I'm very pleased to be here with you, David. And we know each other for quite a few years. And rest assured, by the end of this podcast, you'll be calling me Stephen. And
the cross version, yeah.
Right. So
I'll remind you of your mother.
Yes. Right. Well, as long as you don't throw this slipper or the belt, then it's fine. So my history in the industry spans almost 40 years now, and we started out at a company called Rich Incorporated, and from Rich, yeah. So and there's a lot of, there are a handful of us from the Rich Incorporated, and Micronosis days that are still in the industry.
Gosh, those are, you'll be talking about Data Logic next.
Yeah, well, dare I say Telerate and Quotron and right.
The good old days. The good old days. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of dinosaurs left, I guess, or a handful of us, and so from my journey through this industry has been from field service at Rich Incorporated to running the engineering team to starting West Highland, and for 28 years we ran West Highland until I was approached by TNS it was November of 2023 we were acquired, and we are growing the managed services business at TNS, expanding what we do, and we've of course evolved over the years where we do software development. We have a suite of applications that provide visibility and transparency into market data usage and spend and control, and so we just continue to branch out. And it's been an incredible career. Met incredible people like yourself and good people, good hardworking people in a very, very unique and demanding industry.
It is a good community. As I'm trying to sort of semi-retire, this is my semi-retirement project. And actually, this is maybe the solution because I didn't want to lose touch with the friends I've made over the years. But I think it is a friendly community, and that's a good thing. But just focusing in a bit, TNS, I confess, I've known about TNS for many years, but in all honesty, I don't really know them well, and I don't really understand them well. So can you paint the picture of who TNS are and what they do in their entirety and where you fit in?
Sure. So TNS is actually a big organization. They do a lot of things. Some things that I don't even have any purview into. There's a fraud, investigations team, a team that provides services to banks and ATMs and things like that. But the financial services division, which is headed by a gentleman by the name of Tom Lazenga, what that vertical does is provide connectivity to financial institutions, direct feed, connectivity, vendor of record services, hosting, co-location services, and then hence the acquisition with West Highland. The managed service piece marries that all together to create that, quote unquote, one-stop shop for all things market data, right? Where we can do the hosting, co-location, the management, the commercial services piece of it, right? And the acquisition content side, it's all in this one bundle at TNS.
Okay. Yeah, so that is a pretty broad spectrum. Did TNS stand for something way back when, or
Yes, it actually stands for Transaction Network
that
Services.
was it? Yeah. Okay. Which nicely describes what it does. It does what it says on the tin or whatever.
Well, I tried to get them to change the name to the acquisition since Tom Lazenga was the person driving the acquisition to maybe we could just change it to Tom and Steve, but they didn't buy that.
Tom and Steve's Great Adventure, yeah, or
Right.
something like that.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, look, let's segue. I mean, again, you've seen a few of these episodes. The way these episodes seem to revolve is I pick two or three topics and then we just talk about them. And invariably, if I pick two or three topics, sometimes we only get through two of them. But let's dive in. And I think you've already sort of touched on that first one, market data as a service. And I want to pick up on a couple of things. The as a service, moniker, the name is, software as a service, network as a service, data as a service. There's a whole wealth of as a service offerings, not just in our market. It is a global phenomenon. It's not just the market data industry in lots of areas. Again, as I simplistically understand it, if you have an as a service offering, it's the opposite, or it's contrasted against an on premises. Is that really the right way? But you can have something that's on premises where everything is built and installed and implemented and operated on the customer's site.
Uh-huh.
But if you instead provide the services remotely from a data center, from the cloud, we can talk about definitions in a second, and effectively the customer's plugging into that from that data center slash cloud, that is my understanding of as a service. I mean, have I described it? Have I understood it correctly? That concept?
Yes. So when this started, the whole as a service, just like a lot of other things, right? People put labels on things from a marketing perspective to drive, business and things like that. But the as a service concept came out to try to reduce the spend of not only the financial institutions, but every institution across, across the globe, and whether it's healthcare and, education. If you can get something as a service and subscribe to it, much like your cable television,
Yeah.
you subscribe to that service, right? That's really what the intent is, right? With you can shut it on and off when you need it, you can scale as you need it, and you eliminate that capital expenditure, which is substantial, and then depreciate that over 3 to 5 years. There's a lot of capital outlay that happens when you can go to an expert, right, or a firm that can deliver those as a service, plug into a cable on the wall, and then you get everything that you need and support it, which is another big piece of this as well, because of the skill set shortage in our industry, which is
Yeah.
something else that we
Yeah.
could certainly chat
Yeah.
about, right? So it makes the case even, more, valid to consider an as a service solution.
So maybe I was picking too much up on the technical dimension. There's a big commercial, that subscription model, that, ongoing subscription rather than a capital expenditure, out of OPEX rather than CapEx, I suppose is the magic thing. And I suppose the retail, or is what Microsoft had done with Office 365. You used to be able to buy on a floppy disk. Well, I'm showing how old I am. A floppy disk or a CD. You bought Office or Excel or PowerPoint, and you bought it, and you paid, and that was it.
Right.
And it was, Word 2016 or something. It was dated, so you got different. But now I am subscribing to Office 365, so I pay a subscription, and I get the latest and best continuously. So I keep paying forever. I mean, that's sometimes perceived as a downside because I end up paying more and forever. Is that? I mean, do you know what I come? I mean, is that a downside, or is that just part of the model?
So it's change, right? And everybody tends to be resistant to change. It's something different. We were used to doing something a certain way. So what you and I do at home, we certainly don't like to pay for things over and over and over again,
Yeah.
right? We would like to buy it once and be done with it. Um, Institutions, corporations, things like that, it's kind of the game where they need to be able to be latest and greatest, right? They have compliance regulations, and now certainly with all the things like DORA and the U.S.
Yeah.
regulations and all the international requirements that you have to be able to provide operational resiliency and things across not only hardware but your software, right? You can't be out of date with licenses and things like that because it's an impact to a business, which ties into shareholders and investors, and it just snowballs down, down the road. So that model where you pay over and over again, like I said, for you and I, it's not optimal, right? But for a corporation, the more they spend, the cheaper it is. So they're going to spend it anyway.
Yeah.
Whether they do it in big bulks or they do it over time, the overtime model works really well for them, and the removal of the labor of owning the kit, building the kit, all those things that you mentioned, installing, maintaining, patching, all of those things go away, right? It's handled by somebody else, as does part of the liability. So if you go to a firm, hence the requirements for SOC 1, SOC 2, and things like that, they check the box. Now they ask a question to providers such as us: are you this level of compliant? Do you do these things? And you have to be able to check those boxes, and then they're able to do business with you.
I was the episode that will precede yours. I was doing an episode with a Dutch gentleman called Bernard Schuh, which I pronounced terribly. He pronounces his own name correctly, but it's very Dutch, and I can't do it. So apologies to Bernard for that. From a Dutch company called BIC. And again, it was interesting talking to him because they've got a as a service offering, but they use private cloud. And I was saying to him or asking him to clarify that to me. That means effectively they are running their own data center. A private cloud is effectively you're running your own data center. Are you guys? Do you leverage a private cloud? Do you run your own data center, or are you piggybacking off AWS, Google, Microsoft, Oracle?
So that's one of the beautiful things about TNS is they have their own data centers, and they are in all of the major providers as
Got
well,
it.
right? In a lot of cases, you need to because of proximity and things like that. So it drives that. So they are really neutral when it comes to that perspective. So they have to be they have to have their own, and they have to be in every other vendor that's out there for proximity, for connectivity to clients. Because when you're providing a service to a client, um, all of it's going to be private cloud anyway, right? It just has to be for guaranteeing bandwidth, privacy, and security. So the services that we provide to the clients are typically, from our perspective, what we do in the market data side is all private cloud.
Another thought just popped into my head. We're talking about market data as a service. Now, aren't you late to the race in the sense that's what Reuters did. That's what Bloomberg is, and Reuters market data aggregators. Are they not market data as a service?
So, from as an aspect of what they do, certainly is market data as a service, but it's not an agnostic position, right? They're aggregators, they're consolidators, right? They take a lot of different feeds, and they put some value added content in there and make it easier for people to get. It has a defined latency profile, and it works for a lot of firms. A lot of other firms look for alternatives because of the cost, right? I mean, this is kind of what happens. You have a couple of, two or three big players out there, and the market continues to go up and up and up, and then all of a sudden that as a service model becomes, cost prohibitive, invasive, and people then start to look for alternatives.
So, I mean, as a service isn't a magic wand. It doesn't solve everything. It's how one implements an as a service solution? I mean, there are different as a service solutions. Some are good and some are less good. Is that a fair way? I mean, you can't just because it's as a service doesn't make it wonderful.
You have good cars and you have bad cars,
Yeah,
right? And it's um, conceptually, it's a good idea,
yeah.
right? It is an absolute good idea. It does make it easier. There are certain things that firms want to consider not as a service, right? Things that are proprietary or have visibility into their trading algorithms and their portfolios. Those are things that won't be anytime soon as a service.
Or anything with
Right.
client data. But banks are very, very nervous about anything quote unquote client data escaping their domain.
Client data, PII, all of those things that they wrap around. Then there's ways of getting around things and satisfying the compliance folks and the regulators, and they're expensive for providers to do, which makes it thins out the herd as far as who's going to provide those services, right? Because if it costs a tremendous amount of money to get into the game, they just tend not to do it, right? They'll find some other way in.
So we've had a good, I've learned more, the as a service concept, a technical dimension, a commercial dimension, right? Market data as a service, which I think is how you've described what you're doing. What exactly are you doing? What exactly is that? I mean, it's a lovely title. It's great. It's great marketing, but what actually is that?
So market data as a service, from our perspective over at TNS, is that we are providing complete end-to-end solution for our clients, from the point at which data is consumed into your organization to the point at which it gets distributed. We can do all of that. So we can provide your infra, the management of that. We can acquire all of the content that you need, provide all the content that you need through direct feed connectivity. We can entitle it. We can report on it on your behalf, right, with the vendor of record services and things that we do. And it's provided to you 24 hours a day. So if you're a financial institution and you're looking to have a trading environment, that can be provided to you from TNS, all of that back-end infrastructure. We have the professionals that are part of the Heritage West Highland team and the Heritage TNS team that can cover every aspect of the market data. And we do that, right? We transition clients from, take their journey from their on-prem legacy distribution platforms to a cloud-based solution, right? Or a hosted in their data center, in our data center. It doesn't really make a difference. We provide all of that end to end and support it and maintain it for them.
So there's layers to this, is the way I would look at it. You've got, the original data providers, the exchanges. That's a whole clutch of data providers. Then you've got the aggregators. I'm going to use the word Refinitiv or Reuters just to differentiate it from LSEG, the exchange.
Uh-huh.
And you've got Bloomberg, and you've got FactSet, and S&P, and Morningstar, and I'm sure I forgot a few. I haven't forgotten them, but I haven't got time to mention them all. The aggregators. But then you also talked about infra. You've then got software and hardware for taking that data and distributing it around to different applications, et cetera, et cetera. So do you as a managed service, as a market data as a service, will you manage and operate and provide as a service any infrastructure that customer happens to like? If frankly, if they've picked RTDS, the latest LSEG, the iteration that came Triarch, RMDS, TREP, now RTDS, is that one thing. But then, I know a mutual friend of ours, Bill Beards and BCC Group was on an early episode. Good old Terry Roche and Bob Bonaguru from Markets.io doing their thing. A British company I know very well, Matthew Jeffs and that crowd from Architect.
Uh-huh.
My Dutch friend, Bernard from BIC. I mean, there's a whole plethora of these infrastructure type providers. So how do you the TNS offering? How do you play with them? Are you competing with them, or are you cooperating with them?
Yeah, so we are truly agnostic from that perspective. So we will not dictate to a client a platform that they have to have, where it needs to reside. We are the architects. A client can come up to us and say, we'd like to go to the cloud, or we'd like to go to a different data center, your data center, or some other data center that they like, and we help them get there. If they have a platform that they would like to deploy, they will either consult with us and we will give them our opinion. We will benchmark. We'll do bake-offs for them, and then we will support it. And we do that already for some of the folks that you mentioned today, right? And those guys in particular are abstraction layer technology companies, right? And Arcontech is probably the largest of the deployments in the market share out there, and the other two folks have interesting platforms, and the idea is great. Just like the as a service model, their solutions agnostic layer with one API that you can contract with them, and you connect to this infrastructure to normalize the data, and then it doesn't matter who the content provider is up on the north side. They all have the same challenge with dealing with symbology, and that's the one thing to consider, is that you need to make sure you have your symbology square. But once you do that, then you really have freedom, right? You can pick and choose whoever you want.
I'm going to pick you up on that in a good way.
Yeah.
Because symbology has come up in a few of the conversations I've been having with symbology is relatively closely linked with identifiers. I mean, it's not quite the same. I mean, symbology, the symbology I'm most familiar with from my Reuters background is the RIC code, which I think is the Reuters instrument code. On an earlier one, I said Reuters identifier code, but it's the Reuters instrument code is where it came from.
Correct.
And then good old Bloomberg, the helpful folk they are, came along with Figgy, which did stand for something, but I can't remember what it stood for. Do you know what it stands for? I can't remember.
I don't remember.
I can't remember. I'm sure identifiers in there somewhere. But then they cleverly, I think, made it open Figgy because they didn't want it to be associated with Bloomberg. Somehow that would have been uncomfortable. So you've got those two, and then you've got identifiers like QSIPs and ISINs and CDOLs and Valorans. I'm hitting you with a lot here because in truth, I don't really fully understand what's going on here. Let me pose one thought, which then I'll shut up and let you talk. But I'm on a roll, so I'll finish. You've got a lot of entities might have, frankly, the incumbent, the status quo, which is from the Reuters world, now LSEG, RTDS, and they'll probably be using the RIC code in there, maybe to call data from the LSEG data analytics data center, and they'll be using RIC codes. There was, I understood, a sort of ruling that if you used a RIC code, you had to call data from Reuters, now LSEG, or what have you. So symbology mapping, there was a technical challenge, but there were also commercial intellectual property right challenges. I mean, can you explain? Gosh, I'm so confused. I need unconfusing, Steve.
Okay, so the issue with the symbology, and in particular with the Reuters instrument code, the RIC code, there was a litigation that went on in the UK, and a ruling that came in for a period of time that had to be opened up. So what LSEG or Reuters or Refinitiv did at the time was they opened it up for a period and gave clients the opportunity to purchase an extended RIC license, an ERL, and that allowed them to open up that symbology, not the set of codes towards the beginning of their data set that they use that had the normal standard bid and ask and everything else, but the subset of identifiers towards the end of their string, and they would let you open that up and use it, and it became open for everybody else. And now that has since expired, so either you have the RIC license or you don't at this point.
So that,
And
yeah, because I didn't fully understand that. Does that mean that the people who had the RIC license no longer have it because it's expired, or is it just that nobody else can sign up for the license?
nobody else can sign up. Once they purchase that RIC license, they have it. So
Right.
they're able to do it. And all the large institutions took it. I would imagine, from what I've seen anyway, a lot of them haven't even used it,
Right.
but they took it. I mean, they have that Reuter instrument code. If there was one innovative piece of technology or concept that is in our industry, it's that. That was a brilliant thing to do from the Heritage Reuter organization.
So where we're sitting today, what is the current state of play in symbology mapping? What types of things would people need to do? Is it a case that I've heard somebody describe that maybe the ideal scenario is that it is for client XYZ, a bank or whatever, to come up with a complete symbology of their own, and then for that to route through some symbology mapping, and then that to be routed to whichever data vendor was most appropriate, was most valuable, was cheapest, was best, whatever. Because isn't that the nirvana? It's this idea that you don't want to be, to quote Terry Roche, locked in. Lock-in's bad. Is that what the problem that people are trying to solve?
So yes, they're trying to, in theory, the clients come out and they say they don't want to have this stranglehold that the aggregators have on them. They want that opportunity to be able to change, and the way to do that is to have an abstraction layer technology that leverages a company like Magtia, right? So that's an organization that has all of the RIC codes from LSEG and then
Yeah.
pairs them up to Bloomberg, right? So when you come in, they can do that translation for you, right? And
And
if
that's
you have,
kosher. That's allowed.
that's
That
allowed.
that's allowed. Okay.
Yeah. You can, do that yourself, but imagine every day, somebody has to go through all of the items and securities and pair them across each vendor to see, if you are looking for IBM, very simply, right? IBM is called IBM, .n. Let's say an
Bloomberg.
LSEG,
Yeah.
right? Bloomberg references it some other way, and then you have to get down to bid and ask and trade price and trade time and all the other different fields. And how do you pair all that up to make sure that when uh, one of your aggregators is down, let's say, if there's a problem and you want to take it from one of the other ones. So let's say if LSEG is down and you want Bloomberg, or Bloomberg is down and you want to take FactSet, you now need to have a way to either automatically do that or alert the end user to say, I'm down here, look over here and
Because
get it.
because it's when you're doing this abstraction layer, when you're trying to reroute your request from one data provider, data aggregator to another, or just one data supplier. Yes, you've got the symbology, which is the code IBM.N, which is the IBM share price from the New York Stock Exchange. Those are the two elements there. But then when you get the record, which is an item of data that has a whole load of fields within it, bid, ask, high, low, close, or whatever, open, volume, all the different fields that are in there. That's a data model. So that your application is set up to understand that field number 13 will be the bid or something like that. I mean, very simplistic on the LSEG Refinitiv world. But in Bloomberg, it's field number 23A or something. I mean, and your application has to know that. Is that where the abstraction? Somehow you've got to abstract not just the symbology, but all the field identifiers as well.
You have to match it all up, and you're matching it up, and not only are you matching it up, but you're either there's some logic, whether it's done at the application layer or it's done internally in abstraction layer, as to which value, which content to deliver at what times, right? So if you have, FactSet, LSEG, Bloomberg on your backbone tied into your abstraction layer, you either let the end user and applications call that data on demand when they want, or you're delivering it to them from any of those providers at any time based upon some criteria that you've established, right? Maybe, some subset of that data you want pricing from LSEG, and other times you want it from FactSet, or you want a particular type of content that only comes from Bloomberg. So on the south side, you're just saying, give me content, and then it gets pumped to you based upon that criteria that's already programmed into your model.
I've got to be careful. I don't keep repeating myself because if people watch all the episodes, I've got my little stories. The danger of it's like comedians when they don't like going on television because all their jokes are told in one go and everybody sees it. Whereas if they go to anyway, this isn't a joke. I wouldn't call it this, but it's a story. My cousin worked for a company, Bacardi, the rum company, and they had a big thing where they said if somebody goes into a pub or bar and orders a Bacardi and Coke, they must be given Bacardi, not the cheapest white rum that the bar wants to palm off of them. Because that was what was happening, and Bacardi was spending all the money on brand. And I remember Reuters had a similar philosophy. It was like, well, if somebody is using the Reuters instrument code, they want Reuters data. It's wrong somehow to hijack that request and route it to FactSet or Bloomberg or whatever, because that application, that person wanted Reuters data. I mean, how does that is that still in force, or is that no longer enforceable? Is if you've used a Reuters instrument code, do you no longer can Reuters? It's LSEG now. Can LSEG no longer say, well, you wanted only data for us, and you shouldn't be given data from Bloomberg or FactSet?
Well, I think that's probably not the position of the consumer.
No.
The consumer is looking for content, reliable content at the best price. Where it comes from, I would think that they're less concerned about that.
I tend to agree with you, but I'm just playing devil's advocate there. But the companies like LSEG and FactSet and Bloomberg all have spent a lot of time and money and marketing building their brand, and part of their brand is trust. It's like you can trust our data is better or more trustworthy than somebody else's. So, or does, to your point about the consumer, does the consumer almost have to sign a health warning saying, I accept that I'm going to be routed whichever is the best that my firm wants. I'm muddling concepts here like mad, but
yeah. So that the way that this whole concept happens, right? It's done at the request of the client.
Right.
So the consumer, right, the application owner, the trader, and research analyst, they know that the content that they're getting, and aside from just the three vendors, right, there's a slew of alternative data that's out there as well, right? So it comes from a lot of places. So, they want it aggregated. They want to get it as easy as they can. From an industry perspective, not that many have really considered this, abstraction layer model.
So is that changing? Do you find that more people are knocking on your door, or are you knocking on people's doors and finding they're receptive to this idea? I mean, how easy or difficult is it to pitch this concept?
Conceptually, it's welcomed everywhere.
Right.
Right. So you're speaking to layers of people, right? You brought up a layering concept, right? So you speak to the market data teams, right? The commercial teams, the sourcing folks, and they like it and they want it, and then they say, yeah, let's check it out. Then the next step is trying to get it through the different layers of technology management and CTOs and different lines of business and throughout the organization to get in it, because it becomes a monumental change.
And another word, risk. It's almost like it's a great idea. People like it, But then it's, ooh, if I believe Steve, if everything Steve told me comes true, great. But if somehow it all gets implemented, then it doesn't quite work how Steve said it was going to work. He's a great guy, and I'm sure he meant well, but somehow it didn't, and then my whole system's just crashed and gone. I wish I just stayed with what I had.
Yeah. So, so, so for the record, Steve won't do anything unless it works.
Okay.
Steve survived in this industry for a long time because Steve doesn't tell lies. So
I was not implying you would or did.
Yeah, but there are things that come out there that sometimes they start out and they can't handle the capacity.
Right.
And that becomes more of a difficult challenge. But there's always ways to architect around that, right? It just fans out, which makes it dulls that luster a little bit, but it can still work. And once you get to that point where a client has committed to go down that road, then it's all hands on from client perspective and vendor perspective to really make that happen. So from our perspective, we really are agnostic, right? So we are not driving anybody to a specific platform. We're driving you to, a managed environment that could be any way that you envision it, right? On any platform that you like, and we'll support it and we'll work and we'll test it to make sure that it's safe for you before you actually embark on that.
I think, and I do hope I didn't imply you ever lied, because I know you well enough. But what I was trying to get at was it strikes me, and you've just described these things, I think, there are two main obstacles here. There may be more, but the two that I've identified. One is inertia driven by that bureaucracy. It's just so complicated to change. So many different people have to agree to it that it's a bit of a nightmare making it happen. And the other one is that risk aversion, the idea of, oh, yes, it could be better, but oh, if it wasn't better, I'd look a fool. What the old saying, nobody ever got sacked for buying IBM. Not true anymore, but people of our generation, that expression was always used. Mm-hmm. And that was an excuse for doing nothing, wasn't it? It was, or for just sticking with the status quo. I mean, again, nobody ever got sacked for buying Triarch, RMDS, TREP, and RTDS, because everybody's got it. It's running. It's everywhere. Therefore, why don't we just buy that? I mean, that's my background, and Matt Eddy's on one of my podcasts. So I mean, I'm not knocking it. Uh-huh. It's obviously a really good product.
It sure is.
But there are people arguing out there that there's something unhealthy, dangerous, anti-competitive about all of that. Do you know what I'm saying? Where I'm getting at? It's a bit of a sensitive topic. I'm trying to be sensitive to it.
So the folks out there that have alternative platforms, right? They have to find a way in.
Yeah.
Right, and they have very good concepts, very good ideas, and things that are good for our industry because they are 100% true and factful that if you are tied to one particular vendor, they have a stranglehold on you and they can price the content any way that they want. And unpeeling that, the more applications that an institution writes it based upon a specific, API, or data, structure, the harder it is to peel it away, right? Because they have to retool everything on the south side. In a lot of cases, those application owners don't even exist anymore. They wouldn't necessarily, know how to do it so easily. So it's a big challenge and a big uplift for them to consider something like that. But there's certainly a place for it in the firms that are innovative and really interested in the share price, the bottom line of the firm, making it more cost effective, making the industry better as a whole. Those are the people that will step forward and do something like that.
So your sense is that the customer ecosystem out there, some of it, a reasonable section of it, is open for these disruptors to come in. That a lot of the customers, I suspect not all of them, but a lot of the customers want some sort of disruption. Is that your sense? I mean, how would you describe the sort of philosophy and approach of many of those customers?
A lot of more of them than less of them
Right.
are interested in taking a look at something. Less of them are willing to do it because of what's involved in making that changed. But by going down that path, right, and they have to do it, and they
Yeah.
should do it. They should always look at something that's new and different, and innovative that's out there because it's the best for their business, and that makes the larger, players, the LSIGs of the world, the Matt Eady's, right, of the world,
Yeah.
to speak to him and say, hey, I can get this here. So that drives the larger firms, the three big players to innovate and do things that you can get from a smaller provider. So it really helps the industry, just the presence of them, even if nobody, purchased what they were offering.
Well, actually, you've used that word innovation. I like the word innovation, and I've seen a lot of innovation in my 41 years or whatever. But I sort of almost felt I saw more innovation perhaps in the 80s and the 90s. And what I tend to see now, and it's come up time and time again on my podcast conversations, is this incredible focus on cost. We've got to cut costs. We've just got to keep costs down. That's the mantra, and it can be the sort of enemy of innovation. It can be the enemy of entrepreneurship. I is what's your take? I'm a little bit pessimistic about the industry being so focused on cost.
Well, as an entrepreneur, that's a big driver, right? How do you do it better, faster, cheaper,
Yeah.
right?
But
That's
you put it
it.
in that order, where I'd say people say they want it cheaper and maybe better and maybe faster, but cheaper is good. Steve, focus on the cheaper.
So, as an example, I will use it that many years ago, back in the late '80s, early '90s, when outsourcing and to offshoring really
Yeah.
came into play. So there was a study that was done about that, and it turned out that, and it was done by a CMP publication at the time, um, and their study identified that 60% of those deals cost 40% more.
Wow.
And it was just something, and the industry pulled back, and there was a place to use that, and some of that stuff still goes on today. But because of the subject matter nature of what we have, that skill set, stability of workforce, proximity, there's a lot of things that come into place. When I started my career, as West Highland, uh, Chase, before it was J.P. Morgan Chase, that was our first major client, and I had to jump through a lot of hoops to get them to do business with, little old West Highland.
Yeah.
And then when the outsourcing came in, all of those boxes that they had to check, they didn't have to check because it was 10 cents on a dollar, 20 cents on a dollar. So cheaper they chose. Uh, they didn't get rid of us because they couldn't. But I saw a lot of things go away and then come back because of it. So cheaper is not, is
Is it,
not the option.
I think what you might be saying is the whole concept of a false economy. It looks like it's a saving. It looks like, but actually it comes and bites you later on, and it isn't really a saving. That
It's not. We tried it at West Highland with some development exercises, and it was not a good result for us. We ended up, in the time that it took, even though the cost was lower, the quality wasn't there, wasn't accurate. It was no understanding of it. It was, quite honestly, we were able to find interns,
yeah.
that did a much better job, much faster.
I mean, we're 15 minutes or so to go. So I think we talked about market data. I mean, what's your take? I mean, paint a little picture on the two things: the exchange data world and all of that. And I suppose there's the direct exchange data, but then the market data aggregate. I keep reeling off, in no particular order. I mean, let's start with Iris, the Australian mob, Morningstar, Bloomberg, LSEG Data and Analytics, etc. S&P, FactSet. I mean, In that data supply, we're not talking about the technology, we're not talking about platforms or infrastructure, just the data providers. What are you seeing? What fight is going on? What who's winning? Who's losing? Who's coming out with something different? How would you describe each of those? I mean, I know you have to do business with them, so I don't want you to. But they are different, aren't they? I mean, ice. I didn't mention ice,
Hmm.
as well in there. I mean, there's a
Yeah, ICE is certainly, a player. So the I would say the most upcoming player right now that all of our clients like to deal with is the folks at FactSet.
I confess I've been hearing that as well. That's
Yeah. So FactSet is in there, and FactSet they're investing, and uh, their contractual process tends to be pretty easy. Their terms are easier. They're really attentive to their clients. Um, the LSIGs and the Bloomberg, those are the two big dogs on the block. They certainly are out there looking for business as well, trying to provide enhanced solutions and offerings and things that they have. LSIGs, with the OTCs trying to move to the cloud, more of what they have that's mirrors kind of like a Bloomberg model with one appliance deployed on prem like a BPipe, and then
yeah.
everything else is managed up in the cloud that way. Um, that's the as a service model. Clients just always need to understand that when a lot of times if you do that and you're going to a single provider for something like that, you lose all of the visibility into the performance of your infrastructure. How's it doing? Where are you as compared to others on the street? And what do you do when there's a problem? You're calling a helpline with 1,000 other clients.
I mean, do Bloomberg allow you to encompass them in your market data? So I got the
Mhm.
feeling they'd rather do their own thing, plow their own furrow.
They do, but so we have, a lot of our clients will have their B pipes deployed right into our data centers, right? It's still Bloomberg, it's still point of demarcation, and then but it is a bit of a closed appliance, so you're limited with what you can. The information that you can get from there, but there's a fair amount of information that we are able to get from a operational aspect where we can tell the health of the box, what's going on, where are we, and then because you do things, because we do things for multiple clients, things like software versions, hardware versions, configurations, like we're aware of that. So if one client is behind, you know, where others are have newer technology or latest and greatest code, we're able to bring that to attention to our clients and arrange for that to be upgraded so that the industry is kept at a latest and greatest or close to latest and greatest version and platform across the board, which actually helps all of the consolidators and the data providers as well, right? You have one model that's out there, it's easier for them to support if there are bugs, or new enhancements. It's very easy to do as opposed to, revision management across, 20, 30 different versions of.
And I mean, we really are 10 minutes to go now. I think. Any quick thoughts on exchanges?
Yeah, so it's interesting, so there's two sides of kind of the business, right? You've got the traditional capital market side of the house, and then you've got your prop trading shops that are using all those
Yeah,
direct exchanges. What was interesting to see that happened, over the years is when it first came out, they all took every direct feed that they can. Then they were smarter, and they don't take every data set that's out there. They take only the ones that they're really interested in and that they're making money in. And
okay.
and that's so they scaled down their
They
um,
learned. They learned.
they are, right. I mean, it's prop trading. It's the algos. They're driven by a lot of folks that are PhDs. So there are a lot of really smart people doing some really smart things at a very high rate of frequency. All right.
Much like you and I, Steve. I mean, talking about smart people. I wish.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
We're the two smartest guys on this
that is
podcast,
cool.
David.
Exactly. Uh, Again, I've tried to squeeze almost too much. I'm going to hit you with. I'm going to let you do your parting comments, but there was one other quick question I want to squeeze in as well. I mean, we've mentioned lots of companies and entities and whatever. I mean, any new players, new companies that have caught your eye in our sphere, in our world, that you think are doing some really cool stuff that I haven't mentioned yet, that I should have on my podcast?
You know, um, you may want to take another, look over at Stuart Harvey over at Date Tactics.
Ah, yeah.
He just published something on LinkedIn that I read, and it had to do with AI, and I'm interested in the AI space, and there's a lot of players that are coming out, and we use it, and its application and where it's going
Oh,
to
yeah,
live
because
in our world
I
is going
knew
to be pretty
Stuart at
interesting.
Reuters. And it was Stuart Harvey and Steve Cowler who had Harco for a while, and
Yeah.
then that got bought by, I can't remember who it got bought by, but oh, okay, Stuart. No, I will. I think Mick Foster is over there as well at Day Tactics.
Yeah, he's doing some interesting stuff, and it's all in the AI space with the data content. And he's a very smart and very nice gentleman, as you know,
Yeah. Well,
as well. So
again,
a
I
lot of
haven't seen
respect
him
for Stu.
yeah, I haven't seen him for years and years and years. Look, as I sort of promised, we're reaching a conclusive point. Parting thoughts. I mean, what big picture? What things have you not said? I mean, what things have you seen out there? What are you seeing coming? What is your opinion about certain things that we haven't had a chance to cover yet?
Well, you actually touched on some stuff, right? I mean, we went back into the 80s, and so there was a lot of change, right? I mean, we went from an analog world to a digital world
Yeah.
to, annihilation of
And
trading
Rich, I remember
floors.
the videos. I mean, that was way back, wasn't it? You know, Rich CIS, and then
Yeah.
we had Prism. God, I'm showing my age now.
The ROS system when it first came out, right? It was,
Right.
yeah, the rich operating system. So it was out there. So that amount of change, um, that was easy to see because it was tied to a lot of building of trading floors, right? And it was a lot of innovation. Technology was starting to be applied. So now technology is being applied to different things, and it's about largely to drive cost, largely to access a lot of data sets and try to find alpha and try to identify that competitive advantage. And that's really interesting stuff that's coming out. It's still early, still it's in its infancy stage. I think that, and then balancing and having an understanding about our industry overall with the reduced amount of resources and skill sets, right? It
And
drives that.
I mean, that we haven't got long, but I mean, talent, it comes up a lot. I mean, what's the root of that problem? I mean, how do you articulate and describe the problem? And then what do you wish was what is the solution? Is there a solution?
Well, you have to attract, and some firms are doing this. They go to universities and colleges, and you really need to probably start at the high school. I got into this industry by accident. I didn't know it existed. I'm a computer scientist, and it just, my story is such, which I'll spare you. It was just a complete accident how I got into this industry, and I'm thrilled with it. But in order for it to really thrive and survive, we need people that want to have an interest in doing this. And the challenge becomes most of the younger folks that are coming in want to work for what they see on their cell phones. They want to see the Googles, and they want to see the Azures, and they want to play with some of the AI stuff. But everything that we do, right? This data world that we live in is so important. It drives the world economy, and what we do here, I've said this to some folks previously, the two most important things uh, in uh, in the world are human life and money, and not necessarily in that order. And what we do is make sure that money moves through every industry in every part of this world, because that data content that we provide that has to be timely, accurate, affordable, only comes from the work that we do.
So we've got a job on our hands because, I mean, this is a collective viewpoint. A lot of people are saying this and seeing this, but it's difficult to solve. And parting thought, I've often thought from the FISD perspective, getting out to universities. But it's when you say it like that. I remember having one conversation with the University of Coventry in London or something, and that was a 2-hour conversation. That was just one university. I mean, there's a lot of it's. There's a small company, I don't know if you've come across them, Steve, called DataGum. Neil Ashmore was on one of my podcasts.
Yep.
And he's based himself in Nottingham in the UK. And he's actually doing a lot of work with the 2 universities in Nottingham. So maybe you have to sort of, as a company, reach out to your local university and your local high schools and just focus on getting a few people, maybe some interns or whatever. And there's been a collective conversation. How do we? It's a poor choice of words, but it makes sense. How do we make our industry look sexy or cool or attractive? There's no glib answer.
No, you have to kind of move with the times, right? We have to understand what's interesting to them and make our industry do that, which drives innovation. Right. Yeah. So we have to innovate on how we bring people in, train people, and apply different technologies, because even though we're using these technologies, it requires the people that have the skill sets, the David Andersons and the Steve Rowe and the other folks in this industry that have been around forever, to program those things and provide that information to people that can write the code so that they can understand it, because there's no substitute for 40 years of blood, sweat, and tears in this industry.
It's through osmosis you sort of learn over the years. But I mean, I'm selfishly, I'm not. I was going to say I'm giving back, but I'm not. I'm selling back, because I'm selling my training courses out there. But again, I think there's a need for more people. It's a complicated industry that we sit in. People don't realize how complicated it is, but I love it. And I love the people in it. We started the conversation. And funnily enough, quite a few of the podcasts I've had, I can sense that. People are really affectionate towards this industry.
Good people, great people. We all work hard. We used to host parties for the old SIA shows and those stuff. And we do annual parties, and they're great. Everyone comes together. You meet everybody. It's... you get an opportunity to exhale and laugh.
No, you can have fun and enjoyment as well as working hard. The two sort of go hand in hand. Steve, this has been a pleasure. I knew it would be.
It's my pleasure, David.
I want to say thank you. I'm looking forward to seeing you at some point in person. I don't know when, but I'm sure we'll get to that. So I'm going to bid you farewell. Don't hang up, just stay on the line, and I'm going to press the stop button. But I'll say cheerio.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it.